Hi, this is Lori Winters. I'm founder and CEO of Thread, and this is Thread Connects on May 29th. So instead of doing a town hall this week, we decided to do a webinar on filling out the PPP Forgiveness Application. There are some things that are potentially changing, so we will highlight that a little bit, and then we will go through the actual application process. So the agenda for today is Congress is working on some changes. We're going to talk about that. We're going to touch on the covered period versus the alternative covered period. I'm going to go through the calculations of the reduction in wages and the reduction in FTE or full-time equivalent calculations. And then I'm going to do an actual example using the real application to show you how you would fill this application out and submit it. So quickly, disclaimer, this is based on current guidance from the SBA and the Treasury. It is always subject to change, and it has been from time to time, as we all know. It's also based on our interpretation, so it's not meant to replace your legal or financial consultation, so make sure you're getting other advice as well. So change is coming. Change is inevitable except from a vending machine. I thought that was really funny and quite applicable to what's going on. The House, if you didn't know this already, the House has passed a bill to change the PPP loan forgiveness from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. Now again, this is not made into law yet, so now it will be passed on to the Senate. We will see what's going to happen. Also, they were looking to change the 75% must be used on payroll to drop that, to reduce that to 60%, to give businesses flexibility on how they needed to use the money. Different companies need the money for different things to stay in business. They're looking to change the FTE, the full-time equivalent, safe harbor, from June 30th to December 31st, which would be really good. It would allow you to have more time to restore your employees. And if there's an amount left that is going to be a loan, it would be pushed from 2 years to 5 years. So basically what we're doing is we're waiting on the Senate to take this and determine whether they're going to pass it, whether changes are going to be made. So we don't really know exactly what's going to be final, but one thing is for sure, I do believe there are going to be some changes coming, and no matter what, it's going to be beneficial. So we are going to have a town hall next week, but instead of Tuesday at 11, we're going to do our town hall on Thursday at 11, hoping that these the changes in this bill have been finalized and the Senate approves, passes, and then we will have more information. If something happens before Thursday, before our scheduled town hall, I will do another video like this and make sure that we get it out to everybody because it's so important that we all stay on top of what's going on. So just a little quick, I'm not going to spend much time on this because most of this is going to be about filling out this application for forgiveness, but I want to touch on the covered period versus the alternative covered period. You get to pick which one to use for the most part. Covered period starts with the loan funding date and goes through 56 days. So example of that is, say the loan was funded on April 20th, your covered period would run 56 days after that, April 20th through June 14th. Again, this could be changing if the timeline changes from 8 weeks to 24 weeks, or I've heard the Senate wants 16 weeks, we'll see. The alternative covered period is for administrative convenience, and especially for borrowers with a biweekly or more frequent payroll. This was to just help us align the pay dates with the 8-week timeline. So we'll see what's going to happen. Basically, it would start on the first day of the pay period following the loan funding date. An example of this, it would move 56 days after that. So say that you got the funding on April 20th, but the first day of your next pay period starts on April 25th, then you could use April 25th for 56 days following that, which would push it out past the 8 weeks of the time period of the covered period, and that's okay. You would be able to use the full 56 days for that alternative covered period. The main part of this is to talk about the application for forgiveness, and get ready. I think you might either need a glass of wine or a cup of coffee. I probably had both as I was putting this together for you guys. So it's not easy. hopefully you have a great payroll company that will help you out with this. We have reports that will be in iSolve that will do most of this heavy lifting for you, but I want to at least go through the process of how you fill this thing out. The application for forgiveness has 4 sections. There's the loan forgiveness application form, there's the Schedule A, there's the Schedule A worksheet, and this is the first one to focus on. Most of the work is going to be done in the worksheet. Then there is an optional borrower demographic form. The worksheet is divided into 3 sections, and I'm going to go through details on this. I've got examples. There's a Table 1, which is where you will list your employees that make less than or equal to $100,000 annualized at any period. They've made this specific. So what that means to me is if you have an employee that maybe made less than $100,000 in 2019 or your reference period, but for one pay period, one payroll, they made an equivalent amount through bonus, through commission, that would put them over $100,000 annualized, then you would put them in the next table. So Table 1, under $100,000, less than or equal to $100,000. Table 2 is the same as Table 1, but it is for the employees making over $100,000 annualized. Don't include any of the owner employees in any of these, but they will be still included up to the $100,000. They will be included in a later part. So there's another piece, another part of the application that you will include owner employees. And then part of the worksheet is a full-time equivalent reduction safe harbor. This is going to determine if you dropped headcount, but you were able to restore the headcount by June 30th of 2020. And again, that may change. That date may change. Here is what the Schedule A worksheet of the actual application looks like. Here are the 3 sections, Table 1, Table 2, and the FTE Reduction Safe Harbor. I have done these calculations in a spreadsheet, made it a little bit prettier with some examples so you can understand where the numbers are coming from and where you would put them in those tables and in the application itself. In this example, we have 7 employees. 4 of them make under $100,000. 1 of them makes over $100,000. So I've listed each one of these employees out. We have the covered period annualized wage. So to get that, you would use, take an example of Chris. Chris was paid $10,400 during the covered period, the 8-week covered period. I would divide that by 8 weeks to get a weekly amount, multiply that by 52 to get an annual amount of $67,600. You will see that $10,400 in a minute because that's what's going to go on the table. But in this case, we want to look for wage reductions, so you want an annualized rate. So of the covered period, you see the different annualized rates. You're going to compare it to what the annualized rate was for the quarter 1, January through March 31st of 2020. So for salaried people, you put in the annualized rate. For hourly people, the way that we're interpreting this, and I have read others interpreting it, and it sounds pretty clear on the language of the application, is that you are going to compare their rate of pay, their hourly rate of pay. So covered period, Charles made $17.50 an hour. For Q1, he made $27.50 an hour. And so with this, we're going to calculate between the covered period and quarter 1 what the change of pay of rate, the rate of pay change in pay rate. So for Chris, he had a reduction in 28.84%. That is over the 25% allowed threshold. So we are going to see a reduction in forgiveness for Chris. Dawn had a little bit over 25%, so she will have a problem. Rose was under 25%. Kendra was under 25%. And Olivia was under 25%, so they're fine. Charles is an hourly person. He's $27.50 for Q1. He had a 36.36% reduction in his pay rate, so that is also going to cause us a problem. Teresa made over $100,000, and apparently nobody cares about that, so she is not included in this. So I have another spreadsheet here that I calculated out. Chris and Dawn are both salary. So I'm going to do one of those as an example. And then Charles is hourly, and I'm going to do that one as an example. So for Chris, his average rate of pay for that Q1 was average annualized was $95,000. If you need to multiply that by 75% to see what the number would have been that would have allowed you to not have a reduction in forgiveness, and that would have been $71,250. But his average rate of pay for the covered period, which you just saw in the previous chart, was $67,600. So you would subtract those two, and basically his annualized reduction is $3,650. But you only have to worry about that 8-week time period. So if you take that $3,650, multiply by 8, divide by 52, you will get $561.54. That's the time period, that 8-week period, that you will have to take that amount against the forgiveness. Dawn is the same way. She has a little bit, $76.92. And then Charles is hourly, so I want to explain this one. His average rate of pay for Q1 was $27.50. Multiply that by 75%, which would give you $20.63. But his average rate of pay for the covered period was $17.50. So you subtract those two from the 75% rate, and you get $3.13 is the deficit. His average hours worked per week in that Q1 time frame was 40. So you would multiply 40 by $3.13. You'd get $125, but you have to calculate that over the full 8 weeks. So you take the 125 times 8, and his wage reduction would be $1,000. So in this example, your total wage reduction, you would add these three figures together, and you would get the $1,638.46. So now we're on to Table 1 and Table 2, which this is exactly what Table 1 and Table 2 look like, only a little bit prettier. And you would list your employees. So Table 1 is the employees less than or equal to 100,000. So we've got our 6 employees there. We've listed out their cash compensation for those 8 weeks. So now you've got box 1. You've got box 1 already figured out. It's $38,045. We're going to hold off on the FTE calculation for a minute, and we're going to fill in from that previous spreadsheet our wage reduction amounts for Chris, Dawn, and Charles. And now you've got a total in box 3. Box 3 on the actual form itself is going to be your wage reduction, which is $1,638.46. I'm going to come back in a minute to the FTE reduction exception as well. Table 2 is for your employees over 100,000. So we've got one, Teresa. Her cash compensation is maxed at $15,385. So now you have box 4 filled out. We have a salary and wage reduction safe harbor, and I'm going to give you an example of this. There's a lot of different time frames you've got to compare. This is what the actual form itself looks like, but I did it in a spreadsheet to make it a little bit easier to understand. So the 3 employees that had a reduction in a reduction under or more than 25%, Chris, Dawn, and Charles, we have to compare. We've got to get the rate or wage as of February 15th, 2020. So in this example, and I'm just pulling these numbers, I made these numbers up. So Chris was at $95,000, Dawn was at $70,000, and Charles was at $27.50. You also have to look and see what the average wage or rate of pay from the time frame of February 15th, 2020 to April 26th of 2020, which is this COVID-19 period, okay? So I made this up. Chris is at $67,600, Dawn $52,000, and Charles was at $17.50 an hour. Now you can see that we already know that they're reduced. They're not up to the point of the February 15th payroll. They're below that. So we get an opportunity to make them whole, to restore their wages or rate of pay by June 30th. June 30th hasn't happened yet. In this example, I'm going to say we did increase them some, but we have not restored them to their February 15th, 2020 payroll rate. So we will not be able to take the safe harbor for the wage reduction because I want to show you in the application how you handle a wage reduction. All right, now we're on to the full-time equivalent calculations, and this is the next piece. So I put a spreadsheet together. We're going to take our 7 employees. Again, this does not include the owner. Every single week, we're going to put how many hours they work. So Chris, Dawn, and Rose are salary employees. They continue to work full-time. So we have given them 40 hours through those 8 weeks and put a 1.0. They're a full-time equivalent. It does not matter if they worked 100 hours. You still can only max them out at 1. Charles was hourly, but he's worked full-time, so he is also a 1. Kendra averaged 25 hours a week. If you divide the 25, that is her average, by 40, then she will be a 0.6 of a full 60% of a full-time equivalent. Olivia had some random hours, sporadic hours that she was working. She averaged 14 hours, 14.38. You divide that by 40, and she has a 0.4 full-time equivalency. Teresa was your person over 100,000, so let's hope she was working full-time. She has 40 hours, so she's 1. So if you add those together, then you come up with our full-time equivalent number of 6 for the 8-week time period. You can also, there's a simplified version of full-time equivalent. You can use all full-time people, you can put a 1 next to, and all part-time people, you can put a 0.5 next to. Make sure whichever one you pick gives you the highest full-time equivalency. That's what's going to help you get the most forgiveness. Just stay consistent with this. Okay, now we're back to our table 1, which is the employees less than or equal to 100,000. We have our box 1, we have our cash compensation. Now we have our full-time equivalent numbers. We just fill those in that were in the previous chart. So we've almost finished box 2. As of right now, it's 5, but we've still got that 1 box we need to deal with, the full-time equivalent reduction exceptions we'll deal with in a second. We've got box 3, of course, already done. Table 2 is completely filled out because there is no concern about dropping their cash compensation. So Teresa is a full-time equivalent of 1. So box 5 and box 4 are complete. Now, I mentioned the full-time equivalent reduction relief. There are 4 ways that you can get a reduction in your relief of your full-time equivalent number. One is where you, as an employer, you had to lay someone off, but you're able to give them a good faith written offer with the same wage and hours as before, but the employee declines to come back. Number 2 is where an employee is terminated for cause. Number 3 is where an employee voluntarily resigns, and we presumably this would also include retirement. And number 4 is where an employee voluntarily requests and receives a reduction in hours. For these 4, you are permitted to include these employees in your FTE headcount for the covered period. Now note that if you replace an employee that's described in one of these 4, you can't include them. You can't include these employees in your FTE count because you're basically going to double count them. So just be aware of that. But you are able to take a reduction, an FTE reduction relief against these 4 opportunities. And this has happened a lot, I know, with our clients. So this is really, this is good news. So that is where this FTE reduction number comes in. In our example, I'm going to say we had none. So just to make it easy, we've now got our box 2 filled out. We have 5. So we've got table 1 and table 2 fully filled out. Now, this is complicated. In order to verify your FTE numbers and making sure that you didn't have a reduction, and also calculating to see if you have the safe harbor met, you're going to have to compute FTEs for 5 periods. Now, if you're a client of ours, our reports are going to do this for you. The reports that were released today, and I'm going to be spending time over the weekend calculating and confirming some of these reports for some of our clients. This will do this for you. But one thing I want to say is I would not be submitting any of these applications until we get news as to what the Senate is going to pass. This could drastically change some of this for you, for lots of you. So, but let's just continue down this road, down this path for the 5 periods that you're going to have to calculate FTEs. Our reports will do this for you. If you're not a client of ours, talk to your payroll service provider. They should be able to, and if they don't, you're going to have to do this. So it's either the covered period, or if elected, the alternative covered period. The reference period you select, and that would be either February 15th, 2019 through June 30th, 2019, or January through February 2020, or if seasonal, I think it's May 15th through the end of September of 2019. That's the reference period. You're going to select one of those. The payroll period, that includes the February 15th, 2020 payroll. If you see where we're going here, this is very similar to how we had to calculate the wage reduction calculation in the wage reduction safe harbor. And then the period from February 15th, 2020 through April 26th, 2020, that is the COVID-19 time period that they're looking at. And then June 30th, 2020, which is going to help determine whether or not you've hit the safe harbor for the FTE calculation. So, as an example, you're going to take your FTE calculation for the payroll that included February 15th. You're going to compare it to your FTE calculation that was February 15th, 2020 through April 26th, 2020. Then you're going to decide if your time period between your FTE between February 15th and April 26th, if it was lower than your FTE count for the February 15th payroll, then you're going to have to compare it to your FTE headcount for June 30th to see if the safe harbor was met. If you stayed consistent on your FTEs with February 15th, then you just go on and you will be dividing. You're going to see this in a minute. You'll go enter into line 13, which will be dividing line 12 by 11. We are going to go into that detail and show you an example of that in a second. So here's an example. We have all of our employees here, and for the payroll, and again, I'm basically going to make some of this up. So the average FTE inclusive of February 15th, 2020 payroll. So I'm going to go to that. I'm going to look and see what the FTE count. You're going to have to go do the calculations. Or if you're a client of ours, iSolve will give this calculation for you. So in that case, I'm going to say they were all working full-time. And so my FTE for 215 is a 7. My average FTE for 215 through 426 of this year is, and you'd have to go calculate this, is, I'm going to say 6.0. Okay, we're going to say that they basically were working the same as they were for the covered period. And then we're going to look, once June 30th hits, we're going to look to see what our FTE count is then. I'm going to assume that we stayed about the same and we did not restore, because I'm going to show you what it means when you have a reduction in headcount. So I'm going to say that we did not restore headcount, and so it's still a 6. So now we know that we are not going to hit the safe harbor, and I will show you what we're going to do here shortly. But you will have a what's called a full-time equivalent reduction quotient that you will have to use in the application that's going to reduce your forgiveness amount. All right, so we've decided that we did not hit the safe harbor, so we're going to have a reduction quotient. So you have to decide which time period you want to use, which reference period you're using, and I would stay consistent throughout the whole process on which reference period you're using. It could be February 15th, 2019 through June 30th, 2019, which I think will be most cases. Or you could compare it to January and February of 2020 or the seasonal timeline. Now let's take an example. Let's say during our covered period, we know that we had 6.0 is our FTE count. So we went and did an FTE calculation, and I did not do this in the previous, but let's say we did an FTE calculation for February 15th through June 30th, 2019, and our number was 6.2. Our reduction quotient would be the 6.0 divided by 6.2, or 0.97. Now let's compare it to if we use January and February of 2020, and our head count there was 7. So our reduction quotient would be 6.0 covered period divided by the 7, or 0.86. And what you want is you want that number to be as high as possible. You want it to be a 1. If it's a 1, you get no reduction quotient. So you will lose nothing in your forgiveness due to headcount reduction. So we're going to go with 0.97. That's going to give us the most forgiveness. All right, now we are on to the actual form itself. This is an exact form that I filled out, and so I'm going to go through this with you, and I'm going to show you where these numbers are coming from. So number 1, line 1. Line 1 is going to be the cash compensation that we get from box 1 in table 1. So I'm going to show that to you. Here it is. This is the actual table 1, and box 1 was $38,045. So you see that there. Line 2 is going to come from box 2 from table 1, and as you see, it is our head count number 5.0 FTE from box 1. Excuse me, from table 1, box 2. Then we're going to enter the hourly and salary wage reduction. This came from box 3 of our table 1, $1,638.46. So now we've got that filled out. So now we're going to go to table 2 totals. So line 4, we are going to enter box 4 from table 2. That is our over 100,000 employee compensation, capped at $15,385 per person. So that is where we're getting that number. And then line 5, we're going to get the FTE count from table 2. So box 5 is 1, so we're going to enter 1 there. This next section is going to be, if you're a client of ours and you're running our Ben Admin platform, you should be able to get this from the report that will be coming out today. But here you're going to put the amount paid during the time period, the covered period, for employee health insurance. And in this example, I just used an example of $5,600. Then you're going to add the employer contribution to retirement plans. And in this example, it's $2,000. And line 8 is the employer, state, and local taxes. So this example is $150. Line 9 is where I talked about your owner employee compensation up to $100,000 is going to go. So in this case, we had one owner. That owner made over $100,000, so they're capped at $15,385. So we enter that amount in line 9. So now you're going to get your total payroll cost. You're going to add all those numbers together, 1, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9. In this example, it's $76,565. So now we're down to our FTE safe harbor or reduction calculation. So line 11 is going to be your FTE count, your average FTE during the reference period. In this case, our reference period that we used was February 15th, 2019 through June 30th, 2019, which was 6.2. And that was just a number that we came up with. So that wasn't calculated for you earlier, but that is what we're going to use. Line 12 is your total average FTE from the worksheets. So you're going to add lines 2 and 5, which is 5 and 1, 5 plus 1, 6. So our total average FTE in this example is 6.0. Now you're going to divide these two numbers because remember, we did not hit the safe harbor. So since we did not hit the safe harbor, we are going to have a reduction in forgiveness based on FTE count not being restored. So you divide 6 by 6.2 and we get a 0.97, and that is going to be a number that we're going to be using as a reduction. You'll see that shortly. Okay. Now we're on to the actual forgiveness calculation form. That previous one was the worksheet. Well, we did the worksheet, then we did Schedule A. Schedule A, you pull most of the data from the worksheet. Now we're on to the calculation form itself. So in this example, I just used a loan amount of $110,000. We did not have an idle advance. If you did take an SBA idle loan and you took an advance, you will have to use that to reduce your forgiveness amount. But in this case, we did not have one. We are going to, we've selected the covered period, not the alternative covered period. So we selected 4/20 through 6/14. And now you're going to see where we're going to pull these numbers from. So in line 1, you're going to pull this from your Schedule A, line 10, which is your total payroll costs. So if you look here, you look at line 10, total payroll cost was $76,565. $76,565. You're going to add in your business mortgage interest payments, which in this example, we did not have any. You're going to then, in line 3, you're going to add your rent and lease payments. So this could be, you know, your office rent, it could be copier leases, it could be anything that qualifies for that. So in our example, we had $12,000. And then you're going to add in your business utility payments. That could be gas, power, transportation, telephone, internet, all of those items. And in our example, we're going to have $3,500 there. Then we're going to put in here in line 5 our reduction in wage amount, which is line 3 from our Schedule A that we showed earlier, $1,638.46. So you're almost done with this. Line 6, we're going to add lines 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to add those amounts, and we're going to reduce it by the wage reduction amount of $1,638.46. So once we add those lines 1 through 4 together and reduce it, our total potential forgiven now is $90,426.54. Now we need to put our FTE reduction quotient, which we calculated earlier at 97. So you put a 0.97 is going to be from your Schedule A, line 13, which we already did earlier. Now we're going to look to see what our potential forgiveness amount is. Line 8 is going to be your $90,426.54 times 0.97. So that's the most in that calculation that you could be forgiven. That is after your FTE reduction quotient is applied. So if you take 90,426, so that's line 6, multiply it by line 7, you're going to get the $87,713.72. Line 9, you put the PPP loan amount, which is $110,000. And then line 10, you're going to take line 1, which is your total payroll costs, and you're going to divide that by 0.75. The goal here is to make sure that you did not spend more than 25% on non-payroll costs. Again, that could change based on what's going through the House and Senate right now. But as of right now, you would divide line 1, your total payroll cost, by 0.75 to get this number, $102,086.67. Your last and final line on this fun application is your forgiveness amount. In those lines 8, 9, and 10, you take the lowest amount. So in this case, $87,713.72 is your total forgiven amount. So I know this is clear as mud, but that is basically taking you through the whole application process for forgiveness. The last thing I will say is I do believe that there will be some changes made to timeline, to potentially to percentages that are used outside of payroll costs. Potentially there could be a change to your FTE or wage reduction restoration date from June 30th to something further out. So I recommend that you hold off on submitting these at least for, if you can, for a week and see what happens with Congress. If our next town hall again is Thursday at 11, if something comes up that changes this between now and then, I will do a video and we'll get this out to everybody. So thank you again. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope this was helpful, and we will be talking to you very soon.